his position, or let's say being a head of, let's say, the family head, and whatever position of leadership that represented. So now the question was, he killed unintentionally. He was sent into exile. He was removed from that position while he was in exile. He could have been in exile for 30 years. He could have been in exile, who knows how long he was in exile for. He could have been in exile for 2 months. Now he comes back. He's the Kohen Gadol passed away, and now he's coming back to town. He's coming back home. Does he get back his position or not? So that was the machloket in the Mishnah. So Tana Rabbanan, 13a1. Vishav el mishpachto velachuzat avotov yashuv. This is a pasuk that's written by Eved Ivri. The guy was an Eved Ivri, a Jewish slave, and either he sold himself to raise some money, or he stole and the court sold him, and he used up the money that he stole, and the court sold him to pay back, and he goes free. He's only able to sell himself for 6 years, a 6-year contract. The 7th year he goes free, or if Yovel comes, the Jubilee year comes within the time that he's a slave, he goes out free. And the Torah says that when he goes out free, where does he go? Vishovel mishpachto. He goes back to his family, and he goes back ve'lachuzat avotav yashuv. And he goes back to the holdings of his family. Not only he goes to the family, but the holdings, real estate, properties of his family, he goes back. So, what did you say, Mr. Betesh? So Mr. Betesh says that the language of this pasuk is very specific. He goes back to his family. He goes back to the properties of his family. So the Gemara is saying, "Lemishpachtohu shav." He goes back home to his family. He's reunited with his family because he's been sent away from his family all those years all that time that he was in exile. But ve'enu shav l'masher ziku avotav. He does not go back to the positions of power or honor that was given over from family and that the family had. Let's say the family were the princes of Israel, and it would go, or general positions of leadership go down from father to son. In Judaism, there is this idea that just like you have this idea of monarchy and kingship, that the king and then the son becomes the king and the son's son becomes the king, so too, in general, when it comes to positions of leadership in the community, the son generally gets the position of the father as long as the son is fit for the position. That's why even we see today, like Rosh HaYeshiva, that when if someone's father was Rosh HaYeshiva and the father passed away, the generally is that the son is supposed to get the position of Rosh HaYeshiva, as long as the son has qualifications, but that's the general. We go down; it goes from father to son.
Not with Kanievsky. Kanievsky wasn't his son continuation.
I mean, if Rabbi Kanievsky had a yeshiva, I don't know that he had a yeshiva. I presume his son would be Rosh Yeshiva today. But whether to be the leader, to be a posek in halacha. It's different. A posek in halacha in the Jewish community doesn't have like an official position.
He was the leader, though, in a way, no?
Yes, he was a leader in a way, but it's not. It's a different type of. It's not an official position of leadership. When you're head of a yeshiva, that's an official position of leadership. You are the Rosh HaYeshiva, so the son will take over. If you are the Nasi, you're the prince. Your son will take over. You're the head of the Beis Din. So I would think also the son will take over as long as the son has proper qualifications. Now, the mishpachto hu shav. What do you say, Mr. Betesh? Right. So this is a matter of dispute. Mr. Betesh points out, as the Gemara is going to say, the mishpachto hu shav. Mr. Safti, we're on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph, but by Tana Rabbanan, the middle of the, it's more towards the middle of the page. Okay, you got it? V'shovel mishpachto v'achuz hatavot of Yeshuv, the mishpachto hushav. He goes back to his family, the Eved Ivri. He goes back to his family. Ve'enu shav l'mashach ziku avotav. He does not go back to what his father's, the positions of leadership that was in the family. That's the according to this opinion. That means when the Eved Ivri, he had a position before he was sold as a slave. Now his term is up, and it was a defined term. You knew it was not going to be more than 6 years. Well, you knew Yovel was coming. He does not get back to the positions of leadership. Divi Rabbi Yehuda. Rav Meir Omer. Rav Meir says that he goes back to the positions of leadership that were given down from generation to generation in the family. As the pasuk says, El achuzat avatav. He goes to the achuza, the holdings of his ancestors is ka'avotov. The Gemara's understanding is that the pasuk is telling us that he gets like his father. He gets those positions. El achuzat avotav means the holdings of his ancestors, which would mean positions of leadership that were given from generation to generation. He gets back that position. So we have two opinions in this. In general, that's also the idea. Technically, you have a rav of a shul, a rabbi of a town. The son, if he's official rabbi, the son is supposed to really get that position. And the father passed away, as long as the son has qualifications to that. So he says that even though now that all would be true, but here the question is he went somewhere else. He was sold as a slave. Now, is it appropriate that he should take back? Is it appropriate? Is it respectful? Does he have a right to get back this position of leadership? So that's a machloket in the Gemara. And the Braita continues, v'chein begoleh. Yeah, the Gemara is saying, our Mishnah spoke about a guy who killed unintentionally. And the Gemara says, and the Mishnah quoted a machloket whether he gets back his position of leadership or not. So the Gemara says this is found also, the same discussion we found in Braita is found by an Eved Ivri. And an Eved Ivri is also the same discussion whether he gets back his position of leadership. You hear what I'm saying, Mr. Safti? Meaning an Eved Ivri, a guy who was sold as a slave. Now either but he had a position. He was holding a position of leadership before he was sold as a slave. Now he gets sold as a slave, and now the Torah said, what happens to his position of leadership when he comes back home? He was sold as a slave. He was living by someone else's house for years, maybe 6 years. That's the general that's the contract for 6 years. He's a slave. Now he comes back home. Does he get does he automatically get his position back? Or is it that that since he was sold as a slave, he lost that position of leadership? So that's what the Gemara, that's a machloket over there. And the Gemara says the same thing is over here. V'chein begoleh. The Braita says that the same machloket is regarding a guy who goes to exile, whether he gets back his position. Because Omer Yashuv, when the pasuk says Yashuv, this word seems to be extra. Because what does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, we have different psukim. We have a pasuk that says, let's look at the pasuk. The Gemara brought out one pasuk, v'shav el mishpachto v'lachuzat avotav yashuv. Right? That's one pasuk. He goes back to the achuzat avotav. And then that's talking about the guy who was a slave. Right? And then we have another pasuk that says, that the guy, when he stays in the Ir Miklat, when he after the death of the Kohen Gadol, the pasuk says, Yoshuv harotzeach el eretz achuzato. It says that the rotzeach, the murderer, goes back to the place of, it goes back home. So the Gemara says that when the pasuk says, when the guy is a slave, the pasuk says he goes back. What's the language of the pasuk? It says he returns al mishpachto, he returns to his family, v'lachuzat avotav, and to the holdings of his ancestors. But the pasuk says, and to the holdings of his ancestors, Yoshuv, he shall return. If you already told me Vishav, you told me, you started out in the middle of the pasuk, you're telling me he returns to his family and to his holdings of his ancestors. So what are you going to tell me at the end of the pasuk? He returns to his family and the holdings of his ancestors, he shall return. You just told me he shall return. You told me he shall return to Vishav. You already told me that he's returning. You don't have to repeat again that he's returning. Is that clear, Mr. Bitesh? Mr. Safdie, the extra word, Yoshuv. Vishav el mishpachto, he returns to his family, v'alchuzat avotav, and to the holding of his ancestors, Yoshuv, he returns. You told me he's returning. You don't have to tell me he returns again. Why to say it twice? So the Gemara says, that is coming to tell us the Rabbot, to teach us the Rabbot et harotzeach. It's coming to include the case. We're going to learn out the rotzeach, the guy who murders somebody, is going to learn out. It also says the word Yoshuv over there, and it teaches us that has the same halacha. The guy who murders and comes back home will have the same halacha as the other guy. So let's see how they explain it over here. The pasuk says, it's teaching us that the rotzeach, the murderer, has the same halacha as the guy who goes to the galut. Sorry, the murderer has the same halacha as the Eved Ivri. So whatever the halacha by the Eved Ivri is the same halacha by the guy who murdered.
When he gets free,
When he gets free, right. So that's the question. We have two opinions when the Eved Ivri gets free, whether he goes back to his original position or not. Right. That's another point. Right, very good. So we have by the pasuk, we have the machloket. Where is the machloket found? Whether you go get your position back or not, the machloket is found by Eved Ivri. That's where we have pasuk, and where we have the machloket. Right. It starts off by Eved Ivri. It starts off. We have a pasuk that emphasizes you go back to the family, and you go back to not only the family, you go back to the holdings of the family, the property. And one opinion says that's coming to exclude, you don't get the position of the family. You don't get that honorable position that you had of the family. You get the property back, but not the honor back. And the other opinion says no. Achuzat avotav is also teaching us you also get the position of honor. So we have an argument on how to understand the pasuk. How do you understand the pasuk by Eved Ivri? And then the Breita says the same argument will apply by a rotzeach, by a murderer, whether he gets back his position. And the reason why the same argument will apply is because there is this connection between a rotzeach, a murderer, and a person who's an Eved Ivri. What's the connection between the rotzeach and the murderer? The connection is the word Yoshuv that's said by a Eved Ivri, which is extra, did not need to tell us a second time that he goes back. And that word is also found, the word Yashuv is also found by a murderer. So now there's the Gezerah Shava that to equate the law of a murderer to a Eved Ivri. In what aspect is the murderer still to Eved Ivri regarding the aspect of getting back to your position or not? So that is what the Gemara is saying now, is that you're going to learn one from the other. The second argument, the argument by a murderer, whether he gets back his unintentional murder, whether he gets back his position of leadership, is dependent on what the halacha is. Good morning, David. On what the halacha is by an Eved Ivri. Eved Ivri is where the Torah went into deep, where we have the original argument started there. It starts by Eved Ivri. And then it grows to the murderer, because the murderer is compared to the Eved Ivri. And the Gemara now explains how do we learn out my v'chein begoleh? How do we learn out the guy, the murderer? How do we learn out the murderer from the story of the Eved Ivri? So the Gemara clarifies this point. Kidditanya, like we learned in the Breita. It says, Yoshuv harotzeach el eret achzato. The pasuk says the murderer goes back to the place where his land of his inheritance, the family's properties. So le'eretz achuzato hushav. He goes back to the land of his family's holdings. But the einu shav l'ma'az yaziku avotav. But he doesn't go back to positions of leadership that the family has. And like Mr. Batesh says, even what about, does he get back? Let's say there's a new position from the family, that not only a position that he had before, but let's say a position that became from the family opened up now. He doesn't get back to that position. However, Divrei Rabbi Huda, Rameya Omer, Rameya says, Afu shav l'ma'az yaziku avotav. Rameya says, he does get back to the position of leadership of the family. And the Gemara says, Gomar Shiva Mehatam. How does he learn it? He learns the Gezerah Shavah. Shiva is from the language of Yoshuv. It says Yoshuv, returned by the Eved Ivri, and it says Yoshuv by the guy who killed unintentionally. So that's how, and whatever the law is by Eved Ivri, that's the law by a Rotzeach who kills unintentionally. So the same way there's a machloket by Eved Ivri, does he get his position back? So too, there's the same machloket, and therefore the same way, whatever you hold by Eved Ivri, whatever your position is there, that's gonna be your position when it comes to a guy who killed unintentionally. Now, we had brought up in so Mazel Tov. So Hadranalach Eila Golan. Hadranalach means that we should return to you. We should come back. We should review the parak that we just learned called Eila Hein HaGolin. These are the ones that go to exile. Someone asked a question about a Kohen. What's the law about a Kohen if a Kohen kills someone unintentionally? Does a Kohen is he able to do Birkat Kohanim? So it's interesting. There seems to be a difference of opinion between the Ashkenazim and the Sfardim. The Sfardim are more strict, and they say even if he did tshuva, even if he killed unintentionally, he cannot do Birkat Kohanim. The Ashkenazim say that if he did tshuva, you could be lenient on the Baal tshuva and allow him to do Birkat Kohanim if he did tshuva, if he repented. Now the issue over there it's not a question of taking a position of leadership. The question is it appropriate, the hands that killed, is it appropriate that those hands should do Birkat Kohanim with those hands? Because those hands are trying to serve as a protection for the Jewish people. And now we say you can't have something that causes a prosecution for the people. His hands that killed should not serve as a defending of the Jewish people. That is one of the reasons why the opinions say that you cannot do Birkat Kohanim. But the Bavadi Yosef writes, this is only when the guy killed unintentionally when he could have prevented it. Let's say the guy was speeding in a car. These type of things. If a guy sped in a car, Cohen sped in a car, and as a result of that, he didn't intend to kill anybody, but he killed somebody. That's the case that he can't do Birkas Kohanim. There was some level, like we find by Shogeg, he could have prevented it. But if a guy someone ran in front of the car and he killed them, the Kohen, that will not prevent the Kohen from doing Birkas Kohanim. Now, interesting, in the Shulchan Aruch, in Siman Kuf Lamed Gimel, or Kuf Nun Gimel, it says the following: a person who was accustomed to he had a certain mitzvah. He was the one who always was given that honor of that mitzvah in the shul. Whatever that honor is, that let's say you're the one who always takes out the Sefer Torah. They give you Hagba every day. That's your mitzvah. And then something happened that you weren't able to. Let's say he became poor, and they gave the mitzvah to somebody else. And then I presumed he originally paid for the mitzvah, gave money to the shul, and the shul gave him the honor. You're the one. You give money to the shul. You got it. It's yours. And now the guy's not able to afford to give it anymore to the shul. And then he became wealthy again. And he wants to get back the mitzvah. So if at the time that the synagogue gave it to the second guy, the first guy was able to pay, but he didn't want to pay, so then he lost it. But if the reason why he lost it because he was poor, and then now he has the ability and he wants it back, he gets back the mitzvah. The guy gets back the position. No, it's all okay. He lost the opportunity. Now, so the Mishabur, the Chafetz Chaim says the following: Kosva poskim, a leader of a community that was temporarily sent. He was sent away because of a certain reason, and then whatever the issue was, he was able to come back. There was some unusual circumstance that he wasn't able to. He had to step down. So now the question is, does he get back the position or not? So if it was, he makes the distinction: why did he lose the position? Let's say the guy was sick, he couldn't serve as that position. He'll get the position back. But if he lost his position because of a certain sin that he did, even if he did the sin unintentionally, he doesn't go back to his position, like we say by Makkos. By Makkos, we say if a guy killed unintentionally, Mishogeg, he does not get back to his position of leadership. If he lost his position because he went to exile, now he leaves exile, he doesn't get back his position of leadership because he caused the murder. The fact that it was unintentional, so to a leader in the community, if he had to step down from his position because he did something wrong, he doesn't get it back. That's the Chafetz Chaim, but it's not the final word, because the Eliyahu Rabbah says maybe this thing that you don't get back a position of leadership, maybe it's only limited to a murderer who caused death to a person. But if a person lost the position of leadership because of some other sin, not that level of murder, and then he repents, and then maybe he could get back the position. So that's the conclusion. Is we don't have a final conclusion on the matter. It's a matter of discussion. If it's not a murder, a lower level sin, will he get back the position of leadership? Have a great day, everybody. We should all be zocha to be leaders in the Jewish people in many different ways. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Right. Thank you, Rabbi. Rabbi, question.
Yeah.
It's customary to get a haircut before Rosh Hashanah.
Yes.
But since the Rosh Hashanah falling on Sunday night, and Sunday itself, it's like a kind of hectic with a lot of activities of preparation for Rosh Hashanah. Can you do the haircut even on Thursday or Friday before?
Yes, but you're doing it. It's clear that you're doing it on, and especially a haircut. It's not going to be between Thursday, Friday, and Sunday night. So it's not going to be. It won't be disrespectful coming into the holiday, because you're still gonna look groomed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
it might be different. The guy who shaves on a regular. So it could be that guy should try to do it on Sunday because by the time the holiday comes, maybe, if he grows a lot, you know what I'm saying? A shave guy,
Yeah.
a clean shave guy, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but I'm talking about the haircut, not shaving.
The haircut, no problem. Thursday, Friday, because it's definitely you're gonna look groomed, and you're doing it for the kavod of the Yom Tov.
I got you. Okay.
Do you want me to you want me to put on the thing?
Yeah, closer.
Yeah.
Close as possible, because otherwise I don't hear half of it.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put it on, and if you want to come right back on.